Chaplain Dr. Back will lead the Senate in prayer. Thank you.
Let us pray. God Most High, your faithfulness endures through all generations. Hear our prayer. You desire truth and justice, and you are true to your promises. You promised your children in Isaiah 54:17 that no weapon formed against them will prosper. Lord, let your presence be felt today on Capitol Hill. Open the hearts of our lawmakers to your guidance as you empower them to serve with faithfulness. Dwell in them and those who support their work, making them fruitful for the glory of your name. May they hear your call to rise and follow where you lead as you inspire them to be obedient to your perfect will. Give them patience with those who oppose them, and may they trust in your perfect love, which never fails. We pray in your mighty name. Amen.
Thank you. Will you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. How you doing?
Looking sharp, buddy. Got it. Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business, with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. The senator from Iowa.
Recently, we've witnessed China peddling false claims as it continues to try and convince the United States that China is a good partner. So China has recently claimed this, quote, "The Chinese always honor and deliver what has been promised," end quote. What China asserted is nonsense. Nobody ought to believe that the promises made are honored. So I want to give you one example. Inter-country adoptions. During COVID-19 pandemic, China, they say temporarily, restricted travel into the country, which stalled hundreds of families from completing their adoptions. Today, the families I mentioned continue to be separated from their adoptive child in China, or are learning that the child they have been matched with for many years has been rematched with a different family in China. In this latter case, it's a case for the Robinson family of Iowa. Does that sound like China always honors and delivers what it promises? I think not. In September of last year, I wrote the Chinese ambassador to the United States outlining my concerns about China's termination of its inter-country adoption program and urged China to not go back on its promises, but instead allow for matched adoptions to finally be completed. That has not happened. Now, it is a positive development that Chinese families have a stronger will and capacity to adopt orphans within their own country. Children having a safe and loving home is always a good thing. But my point of contention is that China left American families in the dark and didn't engage in good faith. American families were not given the same opportunity as families from other countries to be united with their children. Real commitments were made, and they were dismissed. This brought disruption to families and needlessly left children orphaned. Again, I suggest China doesn't honor its commitments, and I pray that the hearts of Chinese leaders experience a transformation. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alster-Brooks.
President.
The Majority Leader.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Madam President, before I begin my remarks this afternoon, I want to speak briefly about Iran. For decades, the regime in Iran and its terrorist proxies have sought to sow chaos and violence throughout the Middle East. They threatened death to America and to wipe Israel off the map. All the while, the mullahs have pursued a nuclear enrichment program that goes well beyond what is required for peaceful energy purposes. Madam President, Iran can never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. This has been the position of President Trump and members of this body for years. Since his re-election, President Trump made clear that a peaceful resolution was possible if Iran agreed to give up its nuclear weapons ambitions. Iran's leaders refused. As a result, on Saturday, the President ordered precise and limited strikes to go after Iran's nuclear program consistent with this long-held national security imperative. I'm grateful for the professionalism of all of our service members in carrying out this important mission. Madam President, just a few hours ago, Iran launched an attack against our service members in Qatar and Iraq. President Trump has been clear that he is not afraid to hold Iran accountable for any retaliation, and Iran risks going down a dangerous road with these attacks. Nevertheless, I'm glad that the initial reports indicate that no Americans were killed in these strikes. If Iran is considering any further attacks against U.S. forces or interests, it should think long and hard about the consequences. Madam President, I look forward to hearing from the administration during tomorrow's all senators briefing. Madam President, we are getting closer to passing a bill that will help make America stronger and more prosperous. A bill that will ensure that working families can keep more of their hard-earned money, that will help small businesses grow and create jobs, strengthen America's farms and ranches, rebuild our military, secure our border, and of course, unleash American energy. Madam President, this bill is great news for our entire country, for Americans from every place and walk of life. But today I want to talk about how this bill will help make my home state of South Dakota stronger and more prosperous. That starts with making tax relief permanent. In 2017, Republican-led Tax Cuts and Jobs Act meant lower tax bills for South Dakotans. That bill lowered tax rates for every income bracket, doubled the child tax credit, and nearly doubled the standard deduction. But those tax policies are set to expire, Madam President, this year if Congress doesn't act, which would mean an average South Dakotan would see a $2,500 tax hike next year. We're not going to let that happen. Our bill will extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act's lower tax rates. It will extend the doubled child tax credit. It will extend the nearly doubled standard deduction. But not just extend them, Madam President, make them permanent so that no hardworking American has to worry about a looming tax hike again a few years down the road. I said we're going to make the $2,000 child tax credit permanent, but we're actually going to go even further by increasing the child tax credit by another $200. Under Republicans' bill, the child tax credit will now be $2,200 per child permanently. Madam President, we're also delivering on a number of the President's campaign promises that will provide further relief to hardworking Americans. Under our bill, seniors will be able to reduce their taxes further with a $6,000 boost to their standard deduction. Police officers, firefighters, and hourly workers won't have to pay tax on their overtime pay. Waitresses and busboys will benefit from no tax on tips. And the next generation will be able to access new investment accounts as adults that they can use for their education, to buy their first home, to start a business, in short, to get a running start on their American dream. Madam President, I could go on, but the bottom line is this: a bigger bottom line for hardworking Americans for the long term. More money in their paychecks, more opportunity, and a brighter future ahead. Madam President, the 2017 tax reform also helped grow our economy by lifting the tax burden on American businesses. Small businesses, farms, and ranches all benefited from lower tax rates and investment incentives. Tax reform freed up cash that business owners could use to invest in their operations and their workers. And South Dakotans saw those benefits on Main Street and on the farms and ranches that are the lifeblood of our state. Now Republicans are poised to make many of those reforms permanent. That includes investment incentives like full expensing for new equipment and for domestic research and development. It includes the job-creating 199A small business deduction. And it includes raising the death tax exemption to $15 million and linking it to inflation, meaning countless family farms, ranches, and small businesses will be spared the threat of this fundamentally flawed tax and the headaches that come with trying to plan for it. And speaking of farms and ranches, Madam President, in addition to providing farmers and ranchers with tax relief, our bill updates the farm safety net to address some of the challenges farmers and ranchers have been facing. It increases reference prices for every covered commodity and makes these prices more responsive to market conditions in coming years. It increases crop insurance coverage and affordability, including for farmers just starting out. It supports livestock producers by making existing programs more responsive to drought and by funding prevention of animal diseases that can devastate livestock. It invests in critical conservation programs, including programs that support South Dakota's wild bird populations. And it supports a bright future for agriculture by funding grants for research at agriculture research institutions and promoting trade for commodities in foreign markets. Madam President, America's farmers and ranchers have faced some serious challenges in recent years, some of the toughest, in fact, in recent memory. I'm proud that we are addressing their needs in this bill. And I can assure America's ag producers that their priorities will continue to be a priority here in Washington. Madam President, there's a lot more I could say about this bill and how it will help South Dakota and our entire country. But before I close, I want to focus on how it will make America more secure. It makes a down payment on strengthening our military by investing in the equipment our men and women in uniform need to keep America safe amid today's threats and tomorrow's. And that includes expediting production of the new B-21 long-range strategic bomber, the future backbone of the Air Force's bomber fleet. In the coming years, the B-21s will operate from several locations, including South Dakota's Ellsworth Air Force Base. And it is emblematic of the type of investments this bill is making in our military's future. This bill also makes a significant investment in our border security, including finishing the border wall. And last but not least, it unleashes American energy. It reverses course from the Biden administration's hostility to responsible, conventional energy production. And it will help guarantee a secure, stable, and affordable energy supply for American families and businesses and for our national security. Madam President, a safer, stronger, and more prosperous America is within reach. We've made a lot of progress on this bill, and it's almost time to vote. And I'm looking forward to finishing our work and getting these policies in place for the benefit of South Dakota and of our entire country. Madam President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alster-Brooks.
President,
The Democratic Leader.
I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, earlier today, we received reports that Iran has targeted U.S. military bases and U.S. service members in the Middle East, putting the lives of thousands of Americans at immediate risk. I join Americans. I pray for their safety. This afternoon, I asked the Trump administration to immediately provide a classified briefing laying out the full threat picture, the intelligence behind Iran's retaliation, and the detailed scope and timeline of any U.S. response. More importantly, I've demanded they lay out exactly what measures they're taking right now to keep our service members safe. As I said Saturday night, Congress and the American people are owed answers. No president should be allowed to unilaterally march this nation into war with erratic threats, no strategy, no explanation. That's why I've called on Leader Thune to hold a vote immediately to enforce the War Powers Resolution. The law requires the Trump administration to consult with Congress. The Constitution demands it. And the American people, especially the families of those in harm's way, deserve nothing less. Confronting the Iranian regime's nuclear ambitions and stopping their campaign of terror demands strength, resolve, and strategic clarity. On reconciliation, we've arrived at a pivotal week in the United States Senate, a week where Senate Republicans have to make a choice. Either stand up for your constituents, stand up to defend Medicaid, stand up to protect millions of good-paying jobs, or stand with Donald Trump and his billionaire friends. That's the fundamental choice Republicans face with their so-called big, beautiful bill. Before the week is out, we expect Republicans will bring their bill to the floor for debate. That means very soon the Senate is going to have a long night of vote-a-rama. When vote-a-rama begins, Democrats will be ready. We will pick the Republican bill apart. We will put Republicans on record. We'll force Republicans to explain in multiple ways again and again and again why they want to cut taxes for the rich at the expense of working people. Even now, many Senate Republicans know their own bill is poison. One reason is that their bill will decimate rural hospitals, even more than the House bill would, as bad as that was. It'll do it by curtailing the provider tax that many states use to fund Medicaid. Now, they know it's terrible, so it sounds like Senate Republicans are trying to sweeten this bitter deal by adding a rural hospital fund in hopes of easing the worries of some members among their rank. But make no mistake about it, and the rural hospitals and the American Hospital Association know it, this work is certainly not done. It'll continue to be an ongoing process, but Democrats will continue to use every tool available in the Senate to fight back against the Republican bill. Today, I want to mention one important example. Yesterday, I announced that Senate Democrats successfully challenged a provision Republicans tried to sneak into their bill that would have stripped federal judges of their ability to enforce their own rulings. Now, we all know federal judges have ruled against the Trump administration in the vast majority of cases that are currently in court. Many of the administration's most harmful executive orders have been temporarily halted through preliminary injunctions, restraining orders, and other emergency rulings by the courts. So what did Senate Republicans try to do? They tried to write a workaround into their reconciliation bill. By preventing judges from even being able to issue preliminary injunctions or restraining orders unless plaintiffs paid for the bond up front, it goes even further than what the House Republicans tried to do. That meant if someone wanted courts to put a stop to Donald Trump's freezing of federal funds, or stop DOJ from rummaging through people's private data, or any number of abuses, there are so many, they first had to pay up before the courts could even issue a court order. That's not justice, my Republican friends. That's pay to play. It's antithetical to our system of checks and balances. And once again, the wealthy are favored. They'll be able to afford these bonds. But middle-class people, poor people, many groups will not. And I'm pleased, very pleased, that we Democrats have successfully pushed back against this lawless provision. Now, to be sure, not every decision has gone our way. But we will keep fighting until the last possible moment to strip the worst parts of the big, ugly bill that have flown under the radar. None of this has been easy to do. And I want to thank all the ranking members, their staffs, involved in this long technical process. My staff has done a great job. I salute them. So has Senator Merkley's staff. He's our ranking member on the Budget Committee. The hours have been long. The issues they've worked through have been immensely complicated. So I thank them for their continued good work. And let me close, Madam President, by looking forward for a moment. The debate that will take place here on the floor in the coming days will be one of the very most consequential the Senate has seen in years. At stake is the health care of tens of millions of Americans. At stake, over 2 million jobs in red states and blue states alike, which could throw our country into a recession. There are so many job cuts, all for tax cuts for the wealthy. But today I want to leave my Republican colleagues with this. It will also, if they proceed with their big, ugly bill, they will push our nation's debt to a point of no return. If Senate Republicans try to make Donald Trump's tax cuts permanent, as they're trying to do, they will add tens of trillions to the national debt in the coming decade. Not a few trillion, tens of trillions in the coming decades. Senate Republicans know this, so what do? They try to use a budgetary gimmick called current policy baseline to pretend as if these Trump cuts taxes won't cost anything. This has never been done before in this way, but they're sort of desperate. Look, Republicans can use whatever budgetary gimmicks they want to try to make the math work on paper, but you can't paper over the real-life economic consequences of adding tens of trillions to the debt. They're adding the money to the debt, that's for sure. They just try to do as a paper trick so that it doesn't look like it, but it does. And interest rates will go sky high, no matter what parliamentary gimmick they try to use. Higher borrowing costs for all Americans, for cars, for homes, for credit cards. Americans are going to feel these higher costs because interest rates will go up because they're making the debt so deep, and Americans are going to feel this everywhere they look. American household wealth will permanently be hobbled. Our economy will fail to reach its full potential. That is what will happen if Republicans proceed. Again, there aren't enough budgetary gimmicks in the world to change that fact. And for what? For what? Why are Republicans doing all of this? So billionaires can pay less in taxes, while tens of millions lose their health care benefits and pay more for everyday expenses. I urge the Republicans not to move forward. It's abundantly clear the bill is deeply flawed. And if they do, Senate Democrats will continue to expose the Republicans' bill for the debt-busting mess that it truly is. I yield the floor. No, I yield the floor.
President?
Senator from South Carolina.
Thank you. I'd like to be recognized to make some comments about the conflict we're watching unfold on our television between Iran, Israel, and now the United States. Someone asked me, what is this talk all about? I think a good title would be, what is this all about? To the American people, what is this all about? Let me tell you what it's all about. It's all about religion. A fanatical strain of Shiism is now in charge of Iran, and they have three goals: to purify Islam, and about 80% of Islam is Sunni. Saudi Arabia is the center of that part of the religion. To purify Islam in the image of the Ayatollah, to destroy the Jewish state, to drive us out of the Mideast because we're infidels. This is not a democracy, it's a theocracy. And if you got any time on your hands, go on the internet and check out the theological basis of this regime. You would understand why Israel has to get this right as well as we do. But it was not always that way. Iran is not inherently a radical group of people, a radical place. As a matter of fact, it is a very cultured place. It used to be one of the real pearls of the Mideast. So before 1979, Iran shared intelligence, had economic ties and military cooperation with Israel and the United States. This is from 1950, where Ben Gurion, the founder, the first president of Israel, is talking to an Iranian diplomat in Jerusalem. And Iran had a very vibrant Jewish population. So it's not always been this way. So what happened? They had a revolution. In 1979 to 1981, there was an uprising in Iran that led to the installing of the Ayatollah as the leader of Iran, the first Ayatollah, Khomeini, and now we're on the second one, Khomeini. Now, what is this thing all about? These are students pouring over the U.S. Embassy. And our embassy personnel, 50 American hostages, were held for 444 days by these nut jobs. They were subjected to intense physical and psychological torture throughout their captivity, such as mock executions, beatings, solitary confinement, and very bad living conditions. So, this is what they did when they took over. They came after us, held our people hostage, and treated us very brutally. In 1984, the United States made Iran a state sponsor of terrorism under U.S. law because of the way the Iranian regime under the Ayatollah was conducting himself. They were wreaking havoc throughout the region, and they were doing things against Israel and the United States that justified their designation in 1984 as a state sponsor of terrorism, and that has not changed. Now, why are they state sponsor of terrorists? Because they're terrorists, and they support terrorists. Hezbollah, $700 million we project was given to Iran by Hezbollah. It's almost their entire budget. They're a terrorist group, mainly in Lebanon, of the Shia branch of the tree. Hamas, who conducted the October 7th attack against Israel. Israel projects that 93% of Hamas's military budget came from Iran. And we have the Houthis. All of their missiles and rockets came from Iran. We've got Shiite groups in Iraq funded by Iran. Now, why are they a state sponsor of terrorism? Because they sponsor terrorism all over the world, and they did it with petrodollars from the Iran nuclear deal and other sources of revenue, which was a really bad idea, and that's why Trump pulled out. Here's the reporting over the period here. Hamas-Iran alliance. Captured documents expose decades-long terror funding. So when Israel began to liberate Gaza from Hamas and drive out Hamas terrorists, they found a treasure trove of documents showing the history between Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, suitcase stuffed with cash. U.S. flow of funds to Yemen to help the Houthis. What else have they done other than funding terrorist groups? They've threatened to kill American officials. President Trump, Brian Hook, General McKenzie, Robert O'Brien, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, all these people involved in the Soleimani attack. Now, why did we go after Soleimani? Because he was the leader of the more radical elements of their military that had been targeting the Americans, and he was planning to attack our forces in Iraq, and Trump took him out. 1983, Beirut barracks bombing Hezbollah, supported by Iran. Khobar Towers bombing in Saudi Arabia, terrorist group supported by Iran. That's why they're terrorists. They have been coming after our interests. They've attacked our shipping in the Red Sea, the Houthis have, and they couldn't fire one missile without Iranian support because that's where all their rockets come from. Now, some cast of characters here. The recent new president was sworn in Iran. During the swearing in of the Iranian president, the crowd started chanting, "Death to America, death to America," during the swearing in of the new president not long ago, July 30th, 2024, not quite a year ago. So people wonder what they're up to. Let me tell you what they're up to. They're up to enacting a religious agenda that has no place for anybody but them. If you're a Christian, they want to destroy your faith. If you're Jewish, they want to wipe you off the planet. And if you're a Muslim and you don't agree with them, which most don't, they want to take over the entire faith and make you bend the knee to their view. These people are religious fanatics. What is this all about? Religion. Do you want any of these people to have a nuclear weapon? I don't. They're religious Nazis. Now, are there any telltale signs that may tell us what they're up to? Do you really have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this out? This is a missile in Iran. In Hebrew, it says death to Israel. This is the friggin' missile they took a photo of. In Hebrew, said death to Israel. Wonder what they want to do with that missile. If you're confused about this regime, you should not be allowed to drive because you're a danger to yourself and others. If you think this is not our conflict, you've missed a lot. You've been like sleep at the switch since 1979. You don't know anything about these people. You're talking gibberish. If you don't think this is our concern, look what they've done. They've attacked Americans. They have American blood. The fuel for that reactor comes from Russia. They haven't taken 1 gram of their enrichment program to run the peaceful reactor they claim they want. And to run a reactor, you need to enrich between 3.5% and 5%, not 60%. Now, weapons grade enrichment is 90%. 60 to 90 is like walking across the street. So if you can't figure out what they've been up to, again, you should not be allowed to drive. They're trying to build nuclear weapons. They're making material consistent with a bomb, not a peaceful nuclear power plant. They chant death to America. They chant death to Israel. They kill their own people. They're the largest sponsor of terrorism on the planet. They've been that way since 1979. Wonder what they want to do. The Ayatollah's nuclear ambitions have been spread and said for decades now. I take him serious. Hitler wrote a book. Nobody believed he wanted to kill all the Jews. They should have. Hitler wrote a book about a master race. People should have taken him seriously. They wrote it off as just talk. They excused Hitler's provocative behavior, saying he's just saying these things. Well, we know that didn't work out too well. Last month was the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, the Nazi regime. One of the centerpieces of the Nazi regime was to kill the Jewish people. They put the Jewish people in concentration camps, gas chambers, and they tried to extinguish an entire race of people, our Jewish brothers and sisters, killing 6 million. Just a few years ago, the Jewish people got back to the numbers before the war. 80 years later, we're having a discussion about what should we do as civilized people regarding Iran. I tell you what we should do. We should do something different than we did with Hitler. Because if we do the same old thing, there goes Israel and eventually us. So their nuclear ambitions are not to build peaceful nuclear power plants and fuel them. They're making, their enrichment program is designed to make bombs. They intend to use these bombs because they're religious fanatics. Does anybody doubt if Adolf Hitler had a bomb, he would have used it? If you doubt the Ayatollah would not use a bomb against the state of Israel, you don't understand his religion. What drove Hitler? A sick, twisted, distorted view of the master race. These people want a master religion, not a master race. They want to dominate the world religiously. That's what they're all about. They export terrorism in the name of religion. They support groups that want to take down secular regimes. They want a master religion like the Nazis wanted a master race. And let me tell you what our friends in Israel are saying. Hell no. Once is enough. So what should Israel do? Here's what Israel should do. They should fight back to the American people. What would our country do if there was one missile shot into South Carolina or Alabama from a foreign power that killed our citizens? Everybody in South Carolina and Alabama would be wanting to end the terror and go after the people who did it. And it would be the entire nation. Why should we expect Israel to tolerate what we wouldn't tolerate? There's been over 1,000 missiles shot into Israel. Since their founding, people have been trying to kill them all. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis have one thing in common. They're all funded by Iran. All the weapons come from the Iranians. What is this all about? Killing the Jews and eventually us, and dominating the world religiously. If you think that's weird, then you need to get on the internet and listen to what they're doing. You need to watch their behavior, and they mean what they say, and don't be like the people in the 30s that got it wrong. Israel's not going to let it get it wrong the second time. Donald Trump. God bless President Donald J. Trump. I am so glad he won. What has he tried to do? Make peace, not war. He gave the Ayatollah 60 days to find a peaceful settlement regarding their enrichment program. They could have nuclear power, but they can't enrich. There are 20 nations that have nuclear power that get the fuel for their reactors outside their country. We would have done that for Iran. They were tapping him along. 61 days go by, and the rest is history. They're not interested in peace. They're interested in fulfilling a religious agenda that has no place for us or the state of Israel. Hitler didn't want peace. There was not a part of the country you could give him to stop him from enacting his sick and twisted agenda. He didn't want German-speaking populations. He wanted the entire world to speak German. He wanted the entire world to fall under his Nazi regime. He was nuts. And it took a bunch of people from all over the world, particularly America, to destroy the Third Reich, and about 60 million people died because we got it wrong in the 30s. 6 million Jews. We're not going to let that happen again as long as I'm around, the presiding officer, President Trump, and the people of Israel. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to stick with Israel because sticking with them is helping us. They're fighting the people that want to kill us as much as they want to kill all the Jews. Their fight, in my view, is our fight. Operation Midnight Hammer. After day 60, all the negotiations went nowhere because the Iranians didn't want them to go anywhere. President Trump acted. And it was brilliant, it was bold, and it will live in history. To all those who took part in this, God bless you. We have the finest military on earth. We proved that yet again. But you can have the best military if you don't have the right commander-in-chief. Nothing happens. We got the right commander-in-chief married up with the strongest military in history, which will make us safer. We're not looking to take over Iran. We're not looking to invade Iran. We're looking to make sure that the fanatics who run Iran can't hurt us and can't destroy our friends in Israel. And President Trump did something about it. He sent B-2s to Guam, and everybody thought, well, what's that all about? Well, they missed the other B-2s that went to Iran and put a hurting on these 3 enrichment sites. To the pilots, to the air crews, to everybody involved, well done. I spent 30-something years in the Air Force, and I've never been more proud. Fly, fight, win. Now, what's next? They shot missiles at our air base in Qatar. The Iranians did today, about 16 or 19. One may have gotten through. I think they called us, but just remember what I said. They shot missiles at us today. They shot missiles at Israel last night. The strikes a couple of days ago were designed to shut down the enrichment facilities used to make this weapons-grade uranium. I think we're substantially successful. I've never been more proud of President Trump and our military, and I think we set back their nuclear program substantially. But here's what we didn't do. We didn't change their desire for a nuclear weapon. We changed the capability to make one. Here's my goal, is to have people in charge of Iran who don't want a nuclear weapon to destroy Israel, who will not be the largest state sponsor of terrorism, but live in peace with their neighbors and have a good relationship with the United States. That's what I want. And if you don't want that, there's something wrong with you. How do you get that? 2 ways. The religious fanatics reject their agenda. They change their behavior. Maybe that'll happen, I don't know. Or you change the people. And you replace the religious fanatics with people in Iran who do not want to destroy the world, who do not want to create a master religion, who want to live in peace. And I think that's the vast majority of the Iranians. If we get this right, stick with Israel, stand up to this bully, this religious fanatical regime, let Israel do what they need to do, then I think peace is coming. The presiding officer and myself went to Saudi Arabia and Israel to talk about Saudi Arabia recognizing the Jewish state under certain conditions. Before the attack of October 7th, we were very close to expanding the Abraham Accords to include a deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel that basically would end the Arab-Israeli conflict. An amazing moment in history. October the 7th comes along, a vicious, brutal attack on Israel by Hamas, which is fully funded by Iran, raping women, killing children in front of the parents, and doing things that we really don't need to be talking about on the floor. That was designed to stop reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Israel, because for the Iranian fanatical regime, the worst nightmare is for the Arab world to make peace with Israel and move toward the light. These people want darkness for the world. So what do we do now? Israel has had it. I talked to the Prime Minister yesterday before I went on television, and I asked him, what would you like me to tell America, Bibi? He said 3 things. We're profoundly grateful to the American people for what you do to help the Jewish state. We couldn't be here without you. We're profoundly grateful to President Trump for his strong leadership. He also wanted me to urge the people of Iran to seize the moment to end the nightmare you've been living. And the third thing he wanted me to tell the American people is Israel is not going to live this way anymore. They're not going to raise their children in bomb shelters. They're not going to have their life interrupted daily by ballistic missiles coming from religious Nazis who want to kill all the Jews like Hitler. They're not going to put up with that. Regime change is coming to Iran, 1 or 2 ways. The regime renounces what they've been doing since 1979 and change course, or it's replaced. To expect Israel to do anything else is offensive to me. You're asking Israel to accept normal, being attacked every day and every night by over 500 ballistic missiles? Over 24 Israeli citizens have been killed. The missiles going into Israel are designed to kill children. The attack by the Israelis are designed to shut down the regime's nuclear capability. But the targets are changing. They're now going after the police force that keeps the Ayatollah in power, the intelligence services that scare people into submission, the prisons that house dissidents. Israel has made a faithful decision to go to the heart of this regime, to take these religious Nazis down one way or the other, reject Nazism in the form of religion, or get new people. And I am with them. I'm with them to the bitter end. I'm with them because being with them is in your own interest if you're an American. Being with them is in your own interest if you believe in religious tolerance. Being with Israel means you reject a regime that would take a 16-year-old girl off the bus and beat her to death because she didn't have a head cover. This is evil we're fighting. These are as evil as the Nazis. 80 years later, we're having a debate about what the Jewish people should do to a group that wants to kill them all? Really? We're debating among ourselves what is too much against a regime trying to build dozens of nuclear weapons to blow people off the planet they don't like or agree with? What kind of world are we living in? To all those who want to hold Israel back, what would you do if it were our country? Would you hold us back? If you tried to, we'd run you over. We're not going to live this way as Americans. So what is this all about? I'm going to end where I began. It's about a fanatical regime that took over the country by force, that started out imprisoning Americans, been trying to build nuclear bombs, multiple nuclear bombs, has been the largest state sponsor of terrorism since 1984, has American blood on its hands, has attacked Israel over and over and over again, has suppressed its own people. It's about a religious agenda. Why do they do what they do? Religious, fanatical beliefs, a master religion for the world. And if you don't believe that, you have missed a lot. That's what they want, and the only way they're not going to get there is for somebody to stop them. What did Hitler want? To take over the entire world and create a master race. Anybody that didn't fit his definition of the right kind of person was imprisoned or killed. The Ayatollah and his henchmen have that same view, but it's religiously driven. So what happens in the next few days is going to determine the course of history for the state of Israel and the region for decades to come. To our friends in Israel, finish the job. Do what you have to do to bring about the regime change that will allow your children to sleep through the night. To the American people, wake up. Understand what we're fighting. The Ayatollah is not normal. These are not normal people. Stand with Israel. Standing with Israel, you're standing by you're helping your own self. You're helping your own families. I'll make a prediction. Israel's going to win, and this regime's going to fall. This regime's going to fall of its own weight. The people in Iran are going to have a chance, as the regime gets weakened, to rise up and take back their own lives. I don't know when that day's coming, but it's coming soon. I believe that. I believe the day of reckoning is here for the religious Nazis running Iran, that their terrorism is coming to an end. And it's going to be replaced by a region that moves together, where Sunnis and Shias and Israelis and all different groups, Christians, work together to build economies where all boats rise. We live in a time of choosing. I choose to stand up to evil. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks.
Madam President,
The senator from South Carolina.
I ask unanimous consent to waive the mandatory quorum call with respect to the Zimmerman nomination.
The Senate is in a quorum call.
Yes. To waive it, please.
Without objection.
Okay. I ask you, I know I talk funny. I ask unanimous consent to waive the mandatory quorum call with respect to the Zimmerman nomination.
Without objection.
Okay.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion, we the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Daniel Zimmerman of North Carolina to be an Assistant Secretary of Defense, signed by 17 senators.
Under the previous order, the mandatory quorum call under Rule 22 has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that the debate on the nomination of Daniel Zimmerman of North Carolina to be Assistant Secretary of Defense shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Brett.
Aye. I know, it's exciting when I get to do that.
Hey, Brian. Lindsay. Hey, Tony. Can I have that script? Okay.
Hey, sir, how are you? It is burning hot. Do you not feel like it's like just as bad as home?
My car read 105 at one point. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Elena. Mr. Budd, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Ms. Ernst, Mr. Fetterman, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Gallego, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Hawley, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Hickenlooper, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Husted, Mrs. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Justice, Mr. Kane, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kim, Mr. King, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Langford, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lujan, Ms. Lummis. Mr. Markey. Mr. Marshall. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Merkley. Mrs. Moody. Mr. Moran. Mr. Moreno. Mr. Mullen. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Paul. Mr. Peters. Mr. Reed. Mr. Ricketts. Mr. Risch. Ms. Rosen. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schiff. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott of Florida. Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Sheehy. Ms. Slotkin. Ms. Smith. Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Thune. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tuberville. Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warnock. Ms. Warren. Mr. Welch. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Britt, Cruz, Fetterman, Gallego, Graham, Haggerty, Hassan, Kelly, Marshall, Moody, Moreno, Rosen, Scott of Florida, Sheehy, Tuberville. Senators voting in the negative: also Brooks, Kim, Lujan, Peters, Whitehouse. Mr. Padilla, no. Mr. Schmidt, aye. Mrs. Hyde Smith, aye. Ms. Duckworth, no. Mr. Bozeman, aye. Mr. Paul, aye. Mr. Wyden, no. Mr. Kramer, aye. Mr. Markley, no. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Hickenlooper, no. Mr. Kane, Mr. Kane, aye. Mr. Warnock, aye. Mr. Van Hollen, no. Mr. Husted, aye. Mr. Budd, aye. Ms. Blunt Rochester, no. Ms. Ernst, aye. Mrs. Fisher, aye. Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Cassidy, aye. Mr. Wicker, aye. Mr. Reed, aye. Mr. McConnell, aye. Mr. Warner, no. Ms. Lummis, aye. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Mr. Moran, aye. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Tillis, aye. Mr. Curtis, aye. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Ms. Collins, aye. Mrs. Capito, aye. Mr. Mullen, aye. Oh, Mr. Crowe, aye. Mr. Schiff. How are you? No. Ms. Slotkin, aye. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Mr. Cotton, aye. Mr. Justice, aye. Mr. Heinrich, no. Ms. Hirono, no. Mrs. Murray, no. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Mr. Schatz, no. Mr. Markey, no. Mr. Hawley, aye. Mr. Booker, no. Mr. McCormick, aye. Ms. Baldwin, Ms. Baldwin, no. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Thune, aye. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Mr. Durbin, no. Mr. Young, aye. Ms. Warren, no. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Mr. Sullivan, aye. Mr. Schumer, no. Mr. Hoven, aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 58, the nays are 33, and the motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, Department of Defense, Daniel Zimmerman of North Carolina to be an Assistant Secretary.
Mr. President, more than 16 million people are going to lose their health care, and tens of millions of Americans are going to pay more for health care every month. Hundreds of rural hospitals are going to be forced to close, and we are going to plunge the country into trillions of dollars of new debt. Now, what is this all for? Is it to improve our schools and roads? Is it to make housing and child care more affordable? Is it because we're in the middle of a crisis that just has to be paid for, or we're going to pay down the national debt? No, it's none of those things. It's because they want to cut taxes for the richest people to ever exist. And if that means that you can't see your doctor, or you have to pay hundreds of dollars more every month to pay for your health care, tough luck. Now here's the thing will be felt across the board. Hospitals will do everything they can to weather the storm, but some may not survive. Others will have to increase their reliance on state or local support or reduce services. Access to care will decrease, especially for high-cost service lines like maternal health care and behavioral health. Jobs will be lost. The impact on communities which rely on their hospitals for employment and for growth will be profound. A Utah father of our fellow Georgians and the economic opportunities that consistently make our great state a top state for business. So the stakes are clear. It's people's health, it's people's hard-earned money, it is people's lives. And whether you're in a red or a blue state, you will absolutely feel the weight of this terrible piece of legislation. More than a quarter of nursing homes may close. Hundreds of rural hospitals will shutter. And for what? To pay down the debt? Because we're a nation at war? Because we want to invest in infrastructure or schools or healthcare? No. The reason they are making these cuts to food assistance, the reason they are making these cuts to rural hospitals, the reason they are making these cuts so that people are going to have to pay several $100s more per month for their own health care is to create enough revenue for the biggest tax cut, the biggest wealth transfer from working people to wealthy people in the history of the United States of America. Even if you're not on Medicaid yourself, you likely know someone who is, a friend, a neighbor, a relative, a coworker. And more than that, kicking tons of people in your community off of health care will drive up costs for everybody else and make high-quality care hard to find. You are going to pay more for less care. All for the biggest tax cut in American history for the people who need it the least. And I have no problem with the people who need it the least, but the truth is they need it the least. If you are financially successful and you make $4 million a year, God bless. It's the American dream. It does not mean you need a tax cut. And it does not mean you need a tax cut paid for by reducing services, especially in rural communities. Now, the good news is this. We actually don't have to do this. There is no rush to do this. There is no clamoring among constituents in red or blue states to do this. This is an add-on. What they wanted to do is extend the original Trump tax cuts. Now, I oppose those tax cuts, but I can understand Republicans, as a sort of article of faith, want to extend the tax cuts that their president enacted 2 terms ago. Fair enough. Good, solid, old-fashioned policy disagreements. But then they just larded it up with stuff, giveaways to special interests, and cuts, and cuts, and cuts to things that people care about, left, right, and center. And so we don't actually have to do it this way. You're going to pay more for less care, all so that billionaires just have a little more money sitting in their accounts. It's going to require 4 Republicans saying enough is enough. And I've heard a number of my Republican colleagues talk about how essential Medicaid is to their rural communities. And it's not just the people who are on Medicaid. Obviously, those are the people you've got to be primarily concerned with. But a lot of us go home and visit both urban and rural hospitals, and they all say the same thing, which is that if you blow out like 30% of your revenue, you can't function as an institution. So it's not just a question of whether you personally are on Medicaid or you personally care about Medicaid. It's about, does your rural hospital even survive after this bill is enacted? Nobody wants this, and there is still time to kill this bill. I yield the floor.
Senator from Vermont.
There is time to kill this bill, and I hope we do. You know, as my colleague from Hawaii just said, what's happening in this bill is the infliction of bipartisan suffering. Whether it's in the state of Vermont or the state of West Virginia or the state of Tennessee, folks who are depending on Medicaid are going to lose it. Let me just give a couple of examples. When I was in the House, my good friend David McKinley, Republican, invited me to West Virginia, and we went to the Harrison coal mine. And I was very deeply moved because the only people I know who work as hard as coal miners are dairy farmers. So we have a lot in common. Hard-working folks in Vermont, hard-working folks in West Virginia. But what this bill is going to do is threaten the access to health care that those West Virginia folks need, just like those folks in Vermont need, just like those folks in Tennessee need. It is not about whether you're a Republican or Democrat. It's not about whether you're from a red or blue state. It's actually about real people who work in coal mines, who work on dairy farms, who work in factories. Seniors who need the help of nursing homes. 2 out of 3 nursing home beds are paid for by Medicaid. Parents and disabled children so depend on health care, especially through Medicaid. And that's true in West Virginia. It's true in Nebraska. It's true in Tennessee, just as it is in Vermont. Let me just give a few numbers. In Vermont, 32,000 people are going to lose health care if this bill is passed. In West Virginia, 76,000 people will lose their health care coverage. In Tennessee, it's going to be 290,000 people who are going to lose their health care. It's not just those individuals who are going to lose health care. This budget reconciliation bill, the big beautiful bill, the big bad betrayal, there's real consequences to this that are going to be devastating to rural America. And we have a lot in common in Vermont with so many other parts of rural America, like West Virginia and like Tennessee. Rural hospitals will close, and people will be forced to travel for their care so far that they oftentimes won't be able to get it. And the sad reality, you take away people's health care, they're going to get sick and stay sick. You take away people's health care, and people are going to die. You know, the American Hospitals Association showed that this bill will likely close 338 hospitals in rural communities across the entire country, in your state and in mine. In Vermont, the fear is 3 out of 14 hospitals are at risk of closure with the passage of this bill. In West Virginia, 7 hospitals are at the risk of closure. And in Tennessee, 9 hospitals will be immediately at the risk of closure. You know what happens, too? And it's like we don't even debate this. We don't even discuss it when this reality is about to strike a hammer blow to folks in rural America. If people lose their health care, it doesn't mean they don't need health care. It just means they can't pay for health care. So folks in Vermont who were depending on Medicaid are going to show up at our rural hospitals. Our hospitals are under a legal requirement to provide care. By the way, they would provide care even without a legal requirement, because that's what we do in rural America. We help folks who need help. But those hospitals, already on a thin margin, are not going to be able to afford it, and that's what threatens to have them go out of business. And then we know the spiral. Mr. President, this bill in Vermont is going to result in over $200 million pardon me, in uncompensated care in the next 10 years. In West Virginia, it's $1.4 billion. In Tennessee, it's over $3.5 billion. These rural hospitals, they provide critical care to people in need. We've got to protect the people first. We take away their hospitals, they have no protection. We've got to protect the struggles that communities in rural America have to keep a strong community sense against the enormous pressures that they face. There's a cruelty in this bill. There's an irresponsibility in the Senate if we don't acknowledge explicitly what the impact of this bill will be on the people we represent, pardon me, on the hospitals that are dependent on us, and on the future of community strength in all of our rural communities. Let's kill this bill. Mr. President, I yield back.
Senator from Vermont. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks.
keep me out of it. Senator from Ohio.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be suspended.
Without objections.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate resume legislative session and to be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 2:15 p.m. on Tuesday, June 24th, that following the prayer and pledge, the morning hour be deemed expired, the journal of proceedings be approved to date, the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later today, morning business be closed, and the Senate proceed to executive session and resume consideration of Cal number 138, Daniel Zimmerman, post-cloture, and the Senate vote on confirmation of the nomination at 2:45 p.m. and following disposition of the Zimmerman nomination, notwithstanding Rule 22, the Senate resume consideration of Cal number 140, Pal Dabar, and Senator Houston be recognized to speak. Further, that the Senate recess from 4 to 5 p.m. and the Senate vote on a motion to invoke cloture on the Dabar nomination at 5:45 p.m. and if cloture is invoked, the Senate vote on confirmation at the time to be determined by the majority leader in consultation with the Democrat leader on Wednesday, June 25th, and that following confirmation of the Dabar nomination, the Senate vote to be in Senate vote on a nomination to invoke cloture on Cal number 93, Kenneth Keys. Finally, if any nominations are confirmed during Tuesday's session of the Senate, the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, and the President be immediately notified of the Senate's actions.
Without objection.
If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 2:15 tomorrow.